The whole point of this, though, is because I thought there's an opportunity here to invite all the conference bookers in the Northern Territory that I can find, all the people who are with the industry associations, who are always booking speakers and facilitators to meet a new generation. And I'm not talking about just young people. You can be, I'm 50, man, so I'm not, I get lots of speaking work. So it's the idea of helping you to structure yourself, get some practice in a really supportive, safe space, and come back each month and learn just a little bit more, a little bit more. And then we finally get to a point where you can feel brave enough to go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my TED talk. And that's essentially what the format's like. It's like a TED talk until we get to the final bit, which is where we have the gala night. Who's terrified of speaking in front of people at this gala night? Right? Okay. Yep. I can understand that completely. I wasn't always confident to speak myself, although I've been speaking since I was 5 years old. But it still makes my heart race now. But the difference is now, instead of the heart racing for nerves, it now races for excitement. It always kind of was a little excited, but it also was very nervous as well. And not knowing the right things to say and not really knowing what you're going to say next and how do you start and how do you finish and how do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do this? How do I stand? Those things are all skills that you're going to learn over the next few months. So thank you so much for taking the plunge. It makes me so proud to see so many people here and online as well. We've got a whole bunch of people joining us online too. The good news is today you won't have to speak. Today is all about choosing a topic. So as we go through choosing a topic, we're looking at things that we want to go, well, what is a TED Talk like? What is it like? I know you're gonna be like playing tennis, right? You're gonna be looking at me, looking there. And the only reason I've got it here is because I've got the online people in front of me here. So if you want to sort of get comfortable, is it too hot or too cold in here? Just it's just about right. Okay. 1 degree down on that thing, it becomes like a refrigerator. So, but 1 degree up and then it becomes a sauna. So it's like, hopefully this is perfect. Okay. I'm a little hot, but I just came from gym. So that's probably why. The characters, I'm so hot because I go to the gym. So, what are the characteristics of a TED Talk? What's a really good TED Talk? And has everyone seen a TED Talk? Yeah, okay. Anyone not seen them? Because honestly, not everyone. I went to a group once and said, so we're talking about TED Talks, and someone said to me, oh, what's a TED Talk? I'm like, not everyone knows what these are. So that's why we'll go through what the characteristics of them are, because they all have the same format. Even though they're all different people and different topics, it's always the same format. It's a very comfortable, easy format, called like bite-sized information, right? We're going to study a few of those successful TED Talks, not probably go through all of them, but there's one in particular I might look up and we'll have a look at. We'll look at the TED Talk structure. So the TED Talk structure, how you start, how you explore the topic, how you end it. And then we'll look at a little bit about style and storytelling, although the third session, we're really going to get into that storytelling and how to turn those facts. I know there's a couple of accountants in here, so this is going to be the hardest part. Turn those facts into great, compelling stories. And then how to end it on a really high note, a high note that really wants people to go and find out more about that topic. So a TED Talk is highly relevant to the audience that's going to be there. We're going to explore that a little bit in a sec. It has a level of actionability in it. You listen to a TED Talk and you want to go, I want to do something about what I just learned. I want to, if it's Brene Brown, I want to explore vulnerability. If it's Simon Sinek, I want to explore what my why is. Or if it can be someone like Monica Lewinsky, who was embroiled in a presidential scam. Hello? No, please, we're not that far in, so you haven't missed anything. There we go. The actionability for Monica Lewinsky was that, well, yeah, if I want to know that I've got the resilience to bounce back from a major international scandal and become a successful woman in business, clarity means that it's not hard to understand what people are saying. But so many TED Talks are about very deep science, mathematicians who are exploring quantum mechanics and string theory and making that understandable. So if anyone's like a really super brainiac in here, don't worry, there's a place for you too. All right. There's also an emotional impact in TED Talks. There's something which is, it gets to you. It hits you here. Now you won't feel that way about every TED talk you see, but there's going to be one that comes up. You go, "Oh." And those three that I just mentioned are probably the three that impacted me the most when I saw them, especially Monica Lewinsky. I just looked at that and thought, this is the woman who was the subject of the first internet scandal, the world's first internet scandal that went viral. And I think, how do you come back from that? As a young woman of 23 years old, to come back thinking my entire life and career is ruined, what can I do? It goes, spoiler alert, she's incredibly successful and very good at what she does. And then the novelty. Are you bringing something new? Are you bringing something exciting, a different point of view, a different lens, a view from your background, from your culture, from your learning, from your work, from an idea that you have? That's the whole idea of a TED Talk. They're ideas worth spreading. So we're coming with ideas. So the first one we're going to look at is some successful TED Talks. And I'd say probably look these up and have a watch of these. Each of them is about that sort of 8 to 15 minutes in length. So I won't play them all here. But Brene Brown's Power of Vulnerability, to me, is one of the best ones I've seen. It's great, isn't it? It's one of the most viewed TED Talks on TED. It's one of those things where, like, Brene Brown has a lot of privilege, and she acknowledges that. She grew up in a quite a wealthy Texan family, in a society that likes people like her. She's a Texan mum, but she's also a professor. Like, she's not just coasted through life, but she's also had to face a lot of personal internal hardships. Being a woman in a man's world, being a woman who had no voice, now needing to find a voice, being a woman who's constantly proving herself, not just for the fact that, oh, I'm a woman and a mum, but I'm also a professor and an academic and an intellectual, and being able to make the concepts that she talks about understandable. I'm a big fan of Brene. Like, love her or hate her. Some people don't like her. That's fine as well. But it's more so what the structure is she uses. Simon Sinek, a lot of you will know who he is. He probably has the most watched TED Talk of all time. And it's all about, how great leaders inspire action. But he also had, from his first book, which was your why, finding your why. And the idea is not the letter Y, but your WHY. Why do you do this thing? Beyond rather just you do it. Why do you do it? And then keep asking, why do I do it? Oh, like, why do I do that? Why do I do that? Like a 2-year-old, why? And he sort of says we've lost a little bit of that as we've got older. We no longer ask the question why. We just tend to comply. So another very successful one. I actually can't stand Simon Sinek. I don't like him. I don't know why he triggers me so much. But his content, if I look past it being that smug looking professor guy, the content's great. So if I can just take away his voice and his face and just listen to someone else's voice still, it'd be perfect. That's a me thing, right? Oh, I'm triggered by him, definitely. Elizabeth Gilbert, which is your elusive creative genius. Elizabeth Gilbert is a bit of a she's the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. If you've ever seen that movie, she's the topic of Eat, Pray, Love. So Liz Gilbert, I love Eat, Pray, Love. It's the girliest chick flick ever, and I love it. I think it's such a wonderful exploration of the meandering patterns of life and the cycles that we work through, and that if we don't work through them, then they haunt us at the next cycle and the next cycle and the next cycle until finally we deal with those issues. She talks about her own journey through Eat, Pray, Love as the subject of that book and that movie, but also talks about the depth of that and how connection with people, finding your guides in life, not just completely relying on yourself. It's not like the Oprah, like, oh, just believe in yourself and manifest everything. She's like, oh, yeah, believe in yourself and manifest it, but to manifest it, you've actually got to do something. You can't just go magic, 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 bring it in. You've got to actually do something. Another great talk. And we've got Sir Ken Robinson talk about, do schools kill creativity? Spoiler alert, yes, they do. Very much so. Explores the whole aspect that the school system as we know it today was built out of the Industrial Revolution and designed to produce people who could work in factories and do specific jobs and do that same job for 30 to 40 years before dying. That's how schools were born. It's certainly not what schools are now. Schools are a very different place, even were when I was a kid. But the focus of school is still pretty much to create employees, not to create entrepreneurs or free thinkers, but to create people who will repeat back information, rote learning. Any teachers in the room, I know it's not like that today. And I agree, it's a very different world today. And oh, it's stacks different. Yeah, it is. In learning, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's what he explores that. He says like he gives some great examples of schools that are helping people and kids to be able to become more creative again.
It was really create a job, and in my
Yeah.
time, even though I'm a lot older, they had factories.
Yeah.
They still do. When I went to a country and come to a different country of different values, and I learned not to get caught in that system.
Yeah.
Mm,
That's it.
That's sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on with that one, please, if that's a great talk. It really is a great one. This is one of my favorites as well. Chimamanda is yeah. She talks about the idea that there's a certain way that the stories of the world are told. And you might have heard the saying that says history is written by the victors. But the reality is that depending on where you're going, history is written by the particular lens of whoever the colonizing force was. Australia's history is written by white people, but we're now learning there's a far deeper, richer history, and now that history is being rewritten with many different points of view, not just a singular point of view. And that's what she tells is her story about rewriting her story and the story of her people in a way that brings in multiple points of view and multiple lenses. Because as a woman of color herself, she sees the world differently to me. I see the world different to you, and we all see the world in a slightly different way. But we've sort of agreed in many ways to see the world in a certain particular way, just to have agreement. And she brings up that agreement isn't necessarily a great way to move forward, but consensus and a peaceful coexistence is far more preferable than just simply agreeing to one singular point of view. So I think that's another one that's really good. All of these TED Talks have a lot of storytelling to them. They're not just reciting facts, although facts are given. They're not just reciting an idea, but ideas are given. But the primary part of all these is to bring a piece of themselves into this. The most powerful TED Talks are people who have brought themselves in. Another TED Talk, which is almost infamous, is from a woman called Elizabeth Holmes. So not Elizabeth Gilbert, but Elizabeth Holmes, who formed a startup called Theranos. And Theranos had the idea of anyone who's in tech will know all about Elizabeth Holmes. You take one prick of blood, like in a diabetes test, and you'd be able to test for everything. Not taking out a liter of blood from you like vampires and then taking it off to you could take it out the back into this one machine and it would do the pathology work for you. It was a miracle. It could have changed pathology forever. A lot of phlebotomists probably and pathologists would have lost their jobs, but the idea was that they can put one of these machines in a developing nation and serve 1 million people with one machine. And so there was a lot of success there. The problem was that it didn't exist and it was completely fake. Yeah. And she's now been jailed for 12. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know, right? The problem is it was fake. It was all completely fake. There was no machine. There was no miracle. She raised something like $12 billion, and now she's basically being jailed for 12 years for $1 billion for each year. A lot of But what happened along the way is it's like there's been many explorations, there's movies as well that have been made about this. That's now been explored that all these people who gave the money, none of them actually saw this machine either. Like they didn't even ask the question of like, show us the machine. We'd like to see the machine. She was great at storytelling, and this is my point. That's the dark side of a TED Talk. If you've got a great story but nothing behind it, whoo, and it hits you in the feels, you're feeling real good about this story. That can be very, very frightening. So the idea is we're not doing that. Okay. We're not making up technologies. So we're definitely not doing that. So that's that's successful and one very unsuccessful one. What we're going to do is go through a bit of an exercise now, and we're going to find out what your topic is. Who already knows what they're talking about? They've already worked this out. They walked in today and they said, "I know." That's great because you're going to learn something today. Awesome. If you had of, I would have said, "Good on you. That's great. Have some extra breakfast." So we're going to reflect on your passions, identify where your expertise is, understand who it is that you want to speak to. And bear in mind, I'll give you some insights on who will be there, apart from your family and friends, which is probably more terrifying than strangers, really, isn't it? And how to balance your passion for something with the relevance for that audience. It's a very important thing. So what we're going to look at is what your values are. Does someone have, and I reckon Myra, you could answer this. What do you believe your values are? What are values, Myra?
Well,
And they're they're some of your values? Yeah, so you see there wasn't much of a hesitation there. Myra knows it because Myra's a coach, right? So Myra has gone through this process of knowing what her values are. I know my values off the top of my head: authenticity, honesty, vulnerability, approachability, and effectiveness. I know what they are. You should probably have about three. I'm an overachiever. I like to have a few more. So but basically, three of mine can be tied up into one, which is about honesty, being honest about who I am, honest about what I'm going through, honest about, and anyone who reads my stuff on LinkedIn, you know that's exactly what I do. Sometimes a little bit too much, but that's okay. A little bit of oversharing there. But that's what I want you to work out is what your values are. Now, values can be in the form of, I like to think of it as your non-negotiable. Everywhere you go, every place where you show up, in your family, in your life, in your home, in your workplace, walking down the street here today? What are the things that you can count on that you always will be? Yeah, there you go. So a lot of reliability. Now, isn't it funny? I went to put reliability as one of mine, and then I realized that even on my best days, I'm still not that reliable.
yeah.
So I went, ooh. So what we're not talking about is your aspirations. We're not talking about what you want to be. We're talking about what you actually are. What is easily achievable even on your worst days? So I know I can be honest and I can be approachable on my worst days,
Yeah.
but I can't be reliable even on my best days. Get better. Yep. So reliability, that will be a value for you. Anyone else got one that they can pick off the top of their head that they know is a value of theirs? Sorry? Fairness. Yep. Fairness and justice is very closely related to that as well. Yep, absolutely. If that's something which no matter what situation you're in, you will stand up for something if you believe it. That's perfect. Right on. Empathy, yeah. Empathy is a great one. That's something which you have all the time. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to live with that much empathy, right? Talking about, oh man, when you feel everything, it's like, whoo, that's a lot. Like everything's coming in. We've got Naomi's online saying approachability is one of her ones as well. So approachability is definitely one of mine. I'd be absolutely horrified if I came out of a speech and people went, "Oh, I felt too scared to walk up and talk to you." I'm like, "Oh, that's like ooh, knife in the heart for me." But I think I've worked so hard on being as approachable and open as I can. So that hurts me. So I think, okay, there's something in that speech that I needed to work on to make myself look a bit more easy to approach. We've got any others? Yeah. Yeah. Fun. Yep. Make it a playfulness. Yeah. And I've actually seen you talk about playfulness online before, where it's like such a core part of our lives we tend to lose as we get older, that playfulness. I think I saw loyalty pop up there with our online folks. Chat. Approachability, learning, deep said learning. Naomi's come back and said, is loyalty considered a value? Absolutely. The good thing about about values is they don't have to make a lot of sense to everyone else. They just have to make sense to you. So think about it. Sorry? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, about action. Yeah. It can be action. It can be fitness. It can be healthiness. It can be being outspoken. if that's a value to yours to be outspoken. It could be a value of you believe very deeply in your cultural underpinnings, that they are very important to you. All those things that don't leave you when you go into a different situation. See, action's good. I think you're about to say one as well.
Integrity.
Integrity. Isn't that a great one? Now, I was going to also include that one in my list when I realized that there's some times where I don't do so great at that. No, I'm working on a rather major project for a client right now, and I've just been going, yeah, sure, I'm working on it. Whoops. Haven't been working on it, cramming it all into the last week this week. I got a busy week ahead of me. Been sitting on this one for 6 months. I've now got 6 days to finish it and start it. So yeah, family, absolutely. So you're getting this. You're getting what those values are. So what I want you to do right now is write down at least one value, but shoot for the stars and give me 3 if you can. What? But they actually should be. Like self-centeredness, I think of it as they're very personal. They're very personal, right? Every room needs a serial killer, right? So that's fine. There's one in every group. So I love that. So have a think about what those are. Give you a few minutes to write down what you think your at least one is. And it's okay if you've only got one. Naomi had another one in there too, which I just missed, but I'll bring it back up, which was connection. There you go. Thank you to our online people for taking part, because I know it's harder when you're online. I know when I'm listening to things online, I find everything else to do. I'm just listening in the background and recording notes on my AI note taker. I'll read it later on, which I never ever do. And if you've got one you're just not sure, I'll put it down anyway. Because if it's not the right word, it's probably really close to a word that is right. Deep wrote down knowledge. Another one. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Definitely things you can live up to. Not 100% of the time, because we're not 100% of the time humans. So we are still human. But things, you could safely say 9 out of every 10 times. Like you said, 90% before. If it's 90%, yeah, that's a good value. It's something you show up in. All right. Who wants to share their 3? Please.
Exploration, self-expression. So in practice, it means that I might say no to people, even though it might not feel good for them. I would put myself first because I would see, is this aligned? Am I ready actually? It's nothing against somebody else. It's about me. Am I ready to do it? Or maybe this would stress me even more, even though that's a perfect opportunity. Is it really aligned? Exploration is about learning and again, showing up for myself. Some adventures, putting myself in such environment like this today, kind of still afraid of public speaking. But yeah, we are here all to learn.
Yep.
And the last one, self-expression. So actually sharing the story and being kind of authentic to myself. Yeah, so these are the values.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate that, baby. Anyone else got one? Hey. The first, I'll read these back for you so the people online can hear. So first one was empathy. Wait a minute, aren't you an accountant? Hello. You're the most miserable accountant ever because you feel the pain of your clients now. That actually, to be honest, that would be hard. That must be hard. Yep. Yep. See, yep. Yeah. That's integrity. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Discipline. Never noticed that at all. I had five, so he comes up with seven. Yeah. Awesome. That's excellent. That's interesting. You also, and you actually recognized your aspirations in there too. Like, yes, I want to be this. I'm not there yet, but I do want to be that. And that's an important thing to be aware of as well. The aspirations aren't a bad thing. They're just not something that shows up all the time now, but they will one day. Like, I didn't go to the gym for 6 years. Now I go 7 mornings a week. I wake up at 5 a.m. and go at 5:30 every single morning. I was in Cairns all of last week. I rented a car for the week just so I could get to my gym in Cairns. Like, and just because it's now gone from being an aspiration to it's a core value. It's a habit of my life. Deep, who's you go to bed. You go to bed early. Even on Sunday mornings, I'll get up at 5:30, not 5. So it's like, and I'll be at the gym at 6. So yeah, yeah. Half an hour sleep in. I had Deep online just said knowledge for him was learning about the things I'm interested in, makes me feel energized and opens my mind for a better perspective. So that's interesting too. That's interesting. When you work within your values, you are energized, right? You feel there's what you sort of the real reason, the real definition of integrity is that things are together and working. It's when you've got structural integrity in a building, it's holding together. When you've got integrity in your life, who you are and what you say you are the same thing. They work together and you feel good. You're not walking around in guilt. You're not walking around feeling like an imposter. Yeah. Or have you just inherited values from someone else? Oh, oh these days, ChatGPT them. What are the values of a really good person? And then we might be discovering the other serial killer in the room. Yeah. Oh, we've already found one over there. We've got a psychopath there and a second psychopath. We got two. Notice how they're sitting directly opposite each other. We are all in their target range. So, so anyone else want to share one of their values? Yeah, please.
Honest to the people around me and the people that I cross. It's something that's very important for my life that I, at all times, I maintain that. I do that. I'm always honest. But I also put my faith in there. That's a big value for me that I'm very connected to my faith.
Yeah.
My faith and my culture, I'm very connected to those things and they're so defined and define me and give me purpose and just it's just what it is. Respect is something again because I respect others so that I can be respected too. I give respect to receive respect.
That sounds like it ties back into your faith as well. So very strong connection there.
I do have more than 5, but yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was really good. That's step one. Step two is now What is your background? And this is where we can go really shallow and say, yes, I was born in India. That's my background. I was not born in India. So I was born in Sydney. And you could go as basic as that, tip of the iceberg kind of thing. The things that are very obvious about yourself. I am white, I am male, and what your experience is as that person. But you can also go down a little deeper. It's like peeling off the layer of the onion and saying, oh, what delight is under there in my life? And this is where it's very important to be safe with yourself. I'm a chronic oversharer, but I also have very chronic white male privilege. So I can very happily peel the layers off my onion and everyone's just like, yeah, man, yeah, that's really deep. That's really cool. But you may do that and you may put yourself into an unsafe situation. I'm not a woman of color in a hijab walking down the street at night who will fear for every sound behind them, thinking that I wish I didn't share that information about myself because now I have a stalker. I have had stalkers, very recently had a stalker. And that's because I share so much of my life, both online and offline and in person. And that was a frightening experience. And I'm a big tattooed biker looking guy. So, and I was afraid of that. So just think then, if what you're going to share of your background, is it safe to do that for yourself? Because you don't know everybody who will be in this room. We've got 2 serial killers, but you don't know who are the people that are in this room, let alone who will be in the room on that night we're speaking. So that would be my disclaimer that when it comes to vulnerability and showing depth to your background. Yeah. Yeah. You can connect at any one of those levels. You don't have to go right down to the absolute deepest, darkest moment of your life to connect. Yeah. I still have my secret garden. There are some, I'm very, very open. I would say I'm an open book except for a few pages. There's a few pages I stuck together and I may choose to unstick them one day, but they are still things that I don't talk about because they're either very painful for me to do so and I'm not yet ready to share. Myra?
Can I just touch on what you said about like feeling safe
Yeah.
and like not oversharing too much? But the one thing that I'm often faced is with, because I'm Aboriginal, a lot of people think that I share the same values as Aboriginal people. So I'm sure Dante knows where I'm going with this, but I won't share too much. But they think that I will do a certain thing that other Aboriginal people will do without getting into politics and stuff. But they just always tell me what they did and they think it's the right thing. But it's like, yeah, like I don't share politics.
We had this last night,
Yeah.
actually. We had the Business and Bubbles event for the Darwin Pride Festival. So the LGBTQI with community were in here last night, which I'm a member. And there was something that was shared. There was a particular man, Karan, who was up talking about his experience as not just a gay man, but a gay man of color and a gay man of color with a disability. He's going blind and he's going deaf, and it's a degenerative disease. And so he said, first I had to come out as gay. I was always stepping into a very white world as a gay man of color. And then a couple of years later, after I came out, I started going blind and now I've got a cane. So I then had to come out as a man with a disability, as a differently able person. And so that's exactly right. We're not all the same. And he explained that I am not the same as every other blind person.
Yeah.
Yet, and I'm not the same as every other person who's disabled. You can't just put a ramp in there and say, oh, yes, we're now inclusive. Because how does that help someone with a cane? How does it help someone who's vision impaired? So that's a very good point, really super good point. When you speak about your background, there's going to be a certain time when people will give you a stereotype. They'll say, black woman. And it's certain things that go with being a black woman, right? Middle-aged white guy with a beard and tattoos. There's certain expectations that go with that, right?
It's
making it harder for people with severe disability who aren't as able as the ones who are, say, on a royal commission and saying you don't need a special school because it's apparently not. And the people who are at that are like, you don't understand what this means to us because they're so able-bodied, they're so able, they're on a disability commission. Like the privilege there, and I know that that's so stupid, but when disability is part of your life, it is a part of your life and
Yep.
people around you.
Yep. It's not your whole life. It's an aspect of it. It's a spectrum. I may have ADHD, and that's on a spectrum with several other neurodiverse disorders. But that goes from this severely autistic person with autism who cannot operate through life without a lot of assistance, right through to someone like me who, yeah, I'm on the spectrum, but I can speak in public, but I still have my struggles. So when you're looking at your background, please go with what you feel sharing, that you feel you can safely share. Yeah.
you know, a group. So how do you stand up there and be authentic and a truth teller without like
Without triggering someone?
without
One thing I've learned in my long life on this planet is that it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to trigger someone. So, yeah, you don't have to be a dick about it and just go out and just say, bam, 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 truth bomb. No? Mm.
but tell your story, they're like, oh, well, that's a bit too much.
Yeah.
We're only here at the moment. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. You said be authentic. You said tell the truth.
Yep.
And it's like, well, if who's ready to hear this?
So I think on our gala night, a lot of that will be framed. So my job as a facilitator on that night will be say, you're going to hear stories tonight.
Yeah.
Some of those stories will challenge you and inspire you. Some of them might trigger you. So I just want you to know, be ready for that. And if there's anything you feel that you can't handle, we've got a safe space for you, and I'll have a side room ready where people can go for if they feel overstimulated, if they feel triggered, there'll be a safe space to go into. So as long as we frame it, I'll take care of all that side of it. Make sure that there is a safe space for people to feel like they can remove themselves from that without any repercussions or embarrassment. You know, I always say at the end of my newsletter every Saturday morning, if you're not getting value out of this newsletter, cut me off. I'm not going to come after you. It's okay. It's like breaking a dam wall, and suddenly the dam wall breaks and it gushes out, right? Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the saying. What would happen if everyone started telling the truth?
Yeah.
Oh, it would be so shocking. Yeah. You haven't known me, yeah, at all. So yeah, I guess the message of all that really is just to ensure that you are sharing what you feel that you can safely live with sharing. Because this is, yeah, I found myself that I tend to overshare, and there's sometimes where I go, be nice if I could take that one back, just rewind my life a little. But that's you know, I've never been without work, so it's not like it's affected me that greatly. Oh, seriously, if you could see what I'm thinking half the time. But you know what? If you could see what everyone was thinking about all the time, what you see is themselves, 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 themselves. Yeah. Understanding the self-involvement we have and actually realizing that's human too, right? Where my self-absorption meets your self-absorption and we absorb ourselves together. You know, like, God, talk about buzzwords, right? So what I want you to do now is just write down in one sentence, what is it about yourself that you think you could bring to that stage? Well, things, jot them down if you want to. You don't have to choose today what it is you'll speak about. Oh, so the background could be your culture.
No, no, I mean, because that this wasn't just said, for one, on stage.
Oh, so-
Is it in what does it exist in?
In your background, yes. What part of your background do you want to bring? So do you want it to be an obvious thing? Something that someone can see with you physically? Or do you want to bring something that people can't see, that they wouldn't necessarily know? And you have the freedom to choose that for yourself. It's a hard one, and you don't have to have this sorted out today. You can have a think about this one. Because this one, for some of us, is just easy. Man, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know exactly what I'm going to share about myself. For some of you, this may be the first time you've ever shared this publicly. I would strongly recommend that if there's something you want to share for the very first time about yourself publicly, that you probably don't use this forum to do it. Only because it'll put so much more pressure on you in an area that already has a lot of pressure. You know, first time speaking on a stage with a microphone, first time with an audience, all those things. Naomi's asking, would you only be sharing parts of yourself in relation to your topic? That would be what our next point actually is we're going to go into, which is relevance. So then I want to unleash upon the world this thing about myself, but for what purpose? How is that relevant to a topic, to a theme that you're going to go into? Oh, I think you'd have a good background though. Yeah, exactly. And that's the Venn diagram of the TED Talk, right? How you take that bit of yourself and this topic over here and you kind of bring them together. Yeah. I always start with values and background because they're the color that's going to be part of your story or your topic. They add the more than the here's this. 67% of people do this. Isn't that interesting? But this is where your story comes from, where the story comes from. It's going to be the difference between a person who just delivers information, like a professor at uni often does, or somebody who is like your favorite teacher you ever had, who inspired you to learn more about that topic. For me, it was Mr. Burgess in year 11 in English literature, and he's also my modern history teacher. He brought all that to life. Found it utterly inspiring, to the point I still remember him to this day. And I haven't been to school for a very long time. I still remember Mr. Burgess, as opposed to Mr. Clark, who was my maths teacher, who didn't do a very good idea of bringing maths to life for me because he was a highly analytical, very logical person, and I was not a very analytical, logical kid. I was a very creative, very, as you can probably understand, very creative, a little bit flamboyant kid. So I'm going to move past the principles because I think we actually have covered that in a lot of your values, right? Your principles are like the living out of your values.
So
Absolutely. So that's the other thing too. Between now and next month, you've got all this time to work this out. And that's when I'll have like an open email address that you can just send to me anything you need to, as well as like if you're connected to me on LinkedIn. Seriously, that's the best place to get. Harry knows that. It's the only way to get hold of him sometimes. You haven't? Yeah, connect. Yeah, please do. Yeah, we'll connect. Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be good. All right, next, we're going to go to your expertise before we get into the relevance. And I asked these 4 questions as part of the expertise. What can I teach? What have I noticed? Yeah, go on, sorry. Principles are just, so taking your values and living them out. So the principles and values are very close to each other. But usually what they would be defined as here's my values and here's how I live them out. So that one, I don't focus too heavily on the principle, because if you know your values, you know whether you're living them out or not. That's really good. So a principle could be, okay, I've got integrity. My principles around integrity are that I must always tell the truth in every situation. Otherwise, I'm not in integrity with myself. So that's what your principles are. I'm kind of skipping over because I'm spending too much time on lots of that one topic. It's going too slow. What can you teach? What have you noticed? How do you think differently? And what happened and how did it happen? So before you can ask any of these questions, you have to understand what your expertise is. And you go, well, I'm just an average person. I have no expertise. But I can guarantee you in your life, there's a reason why people come to you for advice or for help. There's something about you. Help with their tax, because you know that stuff. You understand tax law. You understand how to reconcile things in Xero. You may understand how to listen very actively to people for them to be able to feel safe around you. Are you the person who people just say, hey, let's go out and have a chat? Are you the person that gets asked all the time to install something on their computer or show them how to use something on their computer or fix their computer? Yeah.
I was so big, the most likely to be a cat killer.
What do I say? Maybe in a safe space. It's so funny. All right. That's so good though. Isn't it interesting when you go through this process, you discover a little bit about yourself. Some good stuff, some interesting stuff, I guess. So your expertise, like for instance, I can say my expertise areas are areas of personal branding, social media, entrepreneurship, and public speaking. Are areas that people come to me for all the time. Even before I got paid for these things, I was always asked about these things. How do you get the courage to speak in front of all those people? Whereas I don't think it's courageous at all for me because I've been doing it for a long time. But asking me to go into a networking event and meet 5 new people and introduce myself in a promotional way. Nope, nope, nope. I was so terrified of networking that I formed my own networking group. So I could control it. Exactly, right? Exactly. And I know that. Absolutely. Oh, it's easy to network. Chaotic. I know that if I work best with a schedule, I work best with structure. I'm like a 2-year-old, right? If I don't have structure and a schedule and a routine, I go to chaos. So I know that my expertise also could be taking that chaos of having a brain that just doesn't stop and goes crazy over everything and being able to narrow that down. Yeah, yeah. A lot of yeah. Jim Carrey is nothing like Jim Carrey. Like he's actually an incredibly intellectual, like incredibly smart man. But he's the guy who's like mask and the plastic face. I saw him in a movie called Doing Time on Maple Drive back in the 90s, it would have been early 90s. And he played a dramatic role in that. And that was before I knew he was a comedian actor. But he played an early role as a dramatic, and he was an amazing dramatic actor. So it's interesting. What's your expertise? Have a just to write down a couple of ideas. Write down a couple of ideas of what you think it is that people come to you for. And nothing is too boring. What is it that people come to you to help them solve? If it's really boring stuff, that's okay too, because there is nothing too boring. Remember, we've got a couple of accountants in here. I'm gonna pick on you. I'm gonna pick on you guys. I only pick on you, Taran, because I know you can take it. And if you want to narrow it down, think of something that someone came to you for this week that they needed help with. If you really want, and this is not necessarily what you're going to talk about, just to get you thinking. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Ah, so that can be an expertise where you create a safe space for people.
I enjoy it.
My partner and I walk on the beach a couple of times a week. We'll always just notice that dogs just come to me. Like I'm a guy that dogs just go straight to. Kids as well. Little kids, they just find me. And it's always all my life. And it's things because I don't have kids myself or a dog of my own, but I love both kids and dogs. And so it's like they know that, they pick that up. It's like a yeah. Uh, yeah. 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 So those are the kind of things to look at. So that comes under the what have you noticed? What have you noticed about yourself? What have you noticed about an area that you work in? And what have you noticed? How do you think differently to other people? I think Mara touched on it before. Yes, I'm Aboriginal, but I don't necessarily align with the politics of all other Aboriginal people.
Thank you. Brown.
Yep.
Oh. Well, I don't necessarily have the same beliefs and values as her, but still, like creating impact in our community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So perfect example.
Anyone else got some examples they just sort of picked out? Oh, that's an interesting one. Yep.
Say is completely honest. But I always say to them, it comes from my oncological experience. I'm not as opinionated. If I say something, it means I've experienced, or I won't have an opinion. So the problem is that the people that come to me are ready to hear. So a lot of people will say, "Oh no, she's not helpful," but that's because they're not ready to face that. So it's like,
Want the truth, or do you want me to tell you
So
something
you-
nice?
I'm just like, I'm open and I'm safe, and yeah.
So an expertise of yours could be your neurodiverse experience,
Well, yeah,
your lived experience of that. Yep.
and people can't see that as like, oh, like when I was in my 20s, oh, you can't be compared, like, you don't know. When I'm in my 30s, now I'm in my like mid-40s, people are like just starting to listen to me, but I knew the exact same thing as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Oh, I think anyone in here who's under the age of 30 can probably relate to being thought of and told that, well, what can you possibly know? What do you know about life? You know, and I remember being under 30 myself. And absolutely.
So it's things that are stigmatized or stereotyped, particularly in my culture, that people wouldn't necessarily talk about. But I always find myself in a space where some of the most would be considered unbelievable things, in my own culture, that people from my own culture will come and talk to me about and say, hey, look, I've come out as, LGBTQ,
Yep.
I've come out as this, or I'm considering this. And I always listen, but they always go back because they keep, they give me the feedback, feeling listened to, and we always have a solution or a way to work around whatever it is. Sometimes, I say to myself, look, I've got all this burden of, people's issues, some of them which they couldn't share with any other person because of the label, judged, all that
Do you mind
stuff.
if we explore that a little bit more? I'd like to sort of take that example and bring it back to those 4 questions. So what can you teach about that? About that very experience you've had as the person who safely listens, doesn't judge, makes an environment where people feel safe to share deep things about themselves. What can you teach about that? Or what have you noticed about that? Or how do you think differently about that? So perhaps what other people in your culture or background may, or tell a specific story. What happened and how did that play out? And so you start to see, okay, my background isn't just me going, I am. It's about out of who I am and my background, what can I teach someone about that as a neurodiverse individual, as a woman of color, as a woman? Yeah, as a woman of multiple cultures and backgrounds, as a migrant, as a gay man or a trans woman. You're a boat person. Yeah.
Their cultures, and I always let them know, hey, I'm an immigrant too.
Yep.
As soon as I say that, their shoulders relax.
Yep.
They chill out.
Yep.
And they, whew, and I go, because it's the truth.
Yep.
Because I can put myself in anybody else's shoes, empathy, and experience what it would be like if I was them, and what would make them feel if they felt on edge.
I'm going to bring up a bit that Naomi said in here with the what happened and how did it happen. So that last bubble on that's on the screen, is that part of the story sharing, or could that be, or could it be that you can use that to pose a reflection? Both. So it could be the story you're telling. What I'm just saying there is when you identify your expertise and your background, all these things, this is how you bring a story out of those things. That's 4 very key questions. What can I teach? What have I noticed?
They tell me there's a black woman and we're an immigrant or whatever. And I'm like, why aren't we just telling them as ourselves instead of putting every single person into a bracket?
Yeah.
Because, I look like a white woman, I look like a woman from privilege. I don't feel privileged. I've had to fight everything that I've ever had. Jewish African descent, so not a white woman at all. But
Hey, I'm Chinese. Little tiny, tiny little bit. We can. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's from your perspective, that's what you'll bring out. That's your unique skill and insight. And that's exactly what there's room for. So I think the takeaway message of this is, yeah, that's what we're coming up to. We're coming up to that. Coming up to that. Sorry, Myra.
It's basically an identity, and people do that to find their sense of community and fit in and contribute. And that's why people identify with this thing. It's labeled there.
So you got the choice to bring you as you, and you go, I am Hannah. You don't have to label yourself, or you can be, I am Hannah, I am. You can label yourself.
yeah.
Yep.
Very large crew of those people. What is your uniqueness?
Really good. All right. This one's come up. This is the relevant stuff, okay? Understanding who's going to be there. So who's going to be there? Why are they there? And what are they expecting? So I'm going to reach out to you and you tell me who you think on the gala night on the 25th of October, who do you think's going to be there? Yeah. Potential. Potential. A new one or a new old one? No, 25th of October. So, but seriously, that there could be people there from government.
How to deliver a TED talk and it's new voices and it's actually going to be people that may or may not want to be involved in this sort of thing, that didn't actually enjoy.
Absolutely. And by the way, like just to just make this clear to everybody, you don't have to speak on the night to do this course. Like if you get to the end of this and you go, nah, that's completely okay. There's I'm not just doing this just so I've got 10 people to speak on the night. It's also so that there's 30 new people who are going to be more confident and more capable to speak 2 years' time if they want to. So yeah, but I would like to have 10 of you at least. So that'd be good. But yeah, you're right. There could be people here who are very curious about this and they may be coming to next year's course, which hopefully will be territory wide. So we'll have people from Alice and Catherine and Nhulunbuy and small communities as well taking place, which would be fun. Lots. You got that? Yep, you listened. Bing, bing, gold star. So yes, we'll have event organizers there. We'll probably have some people from either whatever the government's going to be at that time. So we'll have like the chief at the time, whoever the chief is will be invited. Different parliamentarians will be invited as well. Whether they show up or not is another story. So it's a busy month, you know, October Business Month. I've got 30 events of my own, let alone, you know, the other 170 events that are going on that month. There could be your family, friends, peers, everybody else who's in this room will probably show up. Yeah. Well, I know my family won't show up because they're sick of hearing my voice. Sorry? Absolutely. So we're going to have there's going to be a bit of a new audience there. But they're not necessarily everybody who would normally go and see this kind of event. But to give you an idea of the kind of people that go to TED Talks, generally are wealthy. TED Talks are very elitist. There's one thing I can say about TED Talks, as inspirational as they are and wonderful as they are, it's a very elitist group of people. We're not doing that. We're not doing the elitist thing at all. You'll be able to bring family and friends for no charge at all. Just you know, before we get to the night, let me know so I know the catering and the seating. But it's not going to be an elitist thing. So there could be a diverse lot of people. Why are they there? Apart from seeing you speak, I'm expecting that the kind of people are going to be there to be inspired. Yeah, that's a very strong likelihood. People who are there. You're going to have seekers and searchers, people who may come up to you after that and say, "Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing my story. I can relate so closely." They'll come up to you and they will want to shake your hand. Some will want to give you a hug, you know, because you hit them right here. Yeah, and that will happen. It will happen. A complete stranger will come to you and said, "Oh my goodness, I can relate so much. You just told my story there."
Yeah.
And it happens all the time with me as well. I'll get off stage and say something. Someone says, "Oh my God, you just said what everyone's thinking." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm used to it now, but it does happen. There's something about being the person standing on stage with a whole lot of people in front of you that's incredibly powerful. It's a privilege to be up there. Yeah. It's a very powerful position to be in. It's the reason why so many damn speeches all the time, right? Because there's something about people are generally followers. So what we go is then they're expecting to not have someone come up and rant at them. I would say if you've got a rant ready to go, or a lecture, that's something that we probably need to work on. So if you've got a very specific rant or a problem you want to bring up, you can have them, absolutely, and you can bring them to the stage. But what I would encourage you to do is if you're bringing a problem, also bring possible solutions. Because the issue is that when you go, there's war in the Middle East and it's horrible and people are dying, we know that. But what are you bringing? What's unique that you're bringing to that argument, to that conversation? Are you just say waving a flag and going, you know, I hate this, I love that? Or are you saying? Yeah, yeah. I'll say that last night's event was one of those problems we saw, I guess, with and this is quite controversial. So please, if you're going to be triggered by this, I hope I don't trigger you by this, with the referendum we had for the voice to Parliament, is that one of the great things we've noticed afterwards is that the people who were running the Yes campaign were preaching to themselves. There was no reaching out to across the aisle to other people. It was just no, it's a thing I noticed. Not a good choice of words. No. It's something that was very much noticed afterwards, is that the rallies were held in very safe places for that opinion. This happened last night at the event I saw last night. I had a bunch of people who said they were doing an event to do a certain thing, to engage with business and to, you know, invite in, let's network. And all they did was just did speeches to themselves. They were basically preaching to people who already agreed with them. Pretty much. If you want to put it there, and we see so much of this. But people who want to change the world spend their time talking to the people who already agree with them. That's a rally. It's a Trump rally. Oh, yeah. So you can see how what we could bring to the stage could fall into that trap, because you've got a particular thing you're trying to do and you're going, oh, there's going to be event organizers. So what I'm going to do is talk about event organization. Well, there's going to be government people. I'm going to talk about as many government buzzwords as I can. I'm going to talk about better outcomes for constituents, you know, or something evil, equally just boring like that. Yeah. So you can, and that's it. And there is a room in a TED Talk style format to shock, but then it has to go from shocking to deliver on the promise. So the shock is, here's a statistic. Only 3% of people say they know who to vote for in the election. That's great. What? What are you doing with that?
Mm.
Have you got a pathway for people to learn more? Have you got a solution for that? So people are expecting a happy ending. Please don't talk about anyone talking about massage, you know? Okay. Right, okay, we're safe. We're safe. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
To me and say, have you thought of this? Holy shit, you've just changed my
Yeah.
whole, like, I'll investigate that. I'm not in that box that goes, this is what I stand
Yeah.
on. I don't.
So be
understand.
prepared for that. Yeah. Be prepared for that. So the format we're doing won't allow for Q&A because that can blow out time. But yeah, exactly. So be prepared for that. So have answers. And yes, like you said, if you don't know the answer, don't try to make one up. You're not ChatGPT, okay? Just say, actually, I don't know. Let's go and figure that out. Do you want to and sometimes it might be you want to catch up for coffee and we'll have a chat about it. Or here's my LinkedIn, let's connect and have a chat about it later on. That's one of the points of this whole thing I'm doing, is that to get diverse points of view, diverse experiences, diverse perspectives, because we just hear the same stuff all the time.
we were promoted here to do this. How is the gala event being promoted?
So it'll be promoted as a night of diverse opinions, diverse experiences, and diverse inspiration.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because you're quite controversial with what you say sometimes.
Sometimes, yes.
How has that affected your life in Darwin? Because one thing I'm worried about is I'm very controversial too, and so is that going to?
I will moderate that with white male privilege. Get away with a lot because I do it with confidence. Quite often people say that, you know, for women to walk into a room with the confidence of a bald middle-aged man, because there's no door that's closed to me.
Yeah.
Because of what I look like. So I walk in that and I acknowledge that.
And it's also like a part of your conviction and your
Yep.
belief on that. as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Can I speak from experience?
Please.
Um,
I will come back to you though.
be- actually, I put see what maybe the consequences. So 10 years ago, in a previous life, I studied performing arts, and I was on TV and that sort of thing. And I did have stalkers and I was attacked. And that's a thing that, and then I had to now deal with, like, I was cow punched and have a brain injury. So I now am going through life as a different person, but that came up. I have not posted on my Instagram or anything since 2015 because it was from me posting stuff that somebody had attacked me because their beliefs were different. So it does happen. You have to be prepared that if you're going, it's a privilege and you have to be a warrior. So you have to completely believe in what you're saying because you're willing to give up the life and your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it's got to.
Well, that's a really strong one, the comfort zone. It could.
Because that's
Yeah.
life.
But
But-
that's like, yeah, to back to your first thing, which is make sure that you are safe.
Yeah.
That was
That's
the
very-
first thing you said, was to choose to make that decision on what you're willing to
Yeah.
go there. Obviously check your employment. Yeah, take out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think that comes back to the very first thing you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Safety aspect.
Yeah.
So whilst I've. This is true. So there are pros and cons, right? So in my life, there's been pros and cons. Some of those pros have been that most of my clientele are women because I create a safe place because I'm outspoken, but I'm not a dick about it. So I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm always trying to pose a question. What if? What if this thing didn't exist? What if people in government would stop saying outcomes and use a different word? You know, I'm always. Absolutely. But there are cons, and some of those cons are there are people in this town who will never work with me.
Yeah.
And I'm completely okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's that your level of comfort to know that some people won't like you.
Yeah.
Some people won't like what you say. Exactly. The courage to be disliked. Perfect. Great book. Yeah, awesome book. Yeah, one of my favorites of the last 2 years. Very good. And it's that courage to know that it's okay if someone doesn't like you.
Yeah.
The chances of someone turning into a stalker and doing horrible things to you is incredibly low because that's not the kind of event we're creating. It's not a rally. It's not something where you're going to have, well, I'm pro-Israel, I'm pro-Palestine. We're not looking for that. But we're looking for people who have stories that maybe haven't been told, opinions that are not necessarily trying to set the world on fire, but that make us think. Ideas worth spreading. Sorry? Oh, yeah. Why do you want to share that story? Yeah. Am I sharing this story to enhance the message I have to share? Does it enhance it? Or am I telling this story because I'm trying to do some therapy here? Because this is not therapy. And honestly, there's far more appropriate and safer places to do therapy than on the stage with 100 people watching.
Yeah.
That's not safe therapy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. I focus a lot on the personal side of it today, simply because you do need to bring yourself on stage. Otherwise, you're just chat GPT. You're just, "Bleh, here's information," right? You bring yourself in, then that's when you get this dilemma. What do I want to say? What do they want to hear? And how can I be a bit of both? You know, how can I say my thing and still meet the expectations of my audience? Because the reality is, you're doing this with an audience in mind. So if you're simply going out that I have a story to tell, I must tell it, that's like half of the public speaking experience. Because when you are asked to come and do public speaking, and Myra has done this many times, there's usually a theme. There's a theme or a purpose for why they chose you to be there. Now, in some cases, it might be, I want to share my story about having a brain injury and the overcoming of that and finding myself after an abusive relationship. Or it could be that I am a man of a certain experience in life who had to overcome drug addiction and living on the streets to become this that I am today. But why are you sharing that? Which is exactly your point. Thank you for that. Are you sharing that for shock value? Are you sharing that to get attention? Or are you sharing that to enhance a greater message? The greater message is you can overcome. There is life after injury.
Yeah.
There is, the ability to come from a position of faith and yet have friends from across a broad spectrum of experiences. And that is what they want to hear. Just about everyone's going to be there to want to be, look, I've got chills. They want to be inspired because the world is an ugly, horrible place right now. It's nasty. It's full of conflicts and people pitting themselves against each other. We've got an election coming up in the US, which is very highly contentious and it's going to get horrible. It's going to get terrible. We've just been through a nasty election in India, which got really, really nasty and has repercussions that will carry on. We're going through a nasty election in France right now, where it is getting really horrible. Like there's going to be riots on streets. We just come through. It's a very divided world. So what we're looking for is the commonality of human experience, that anyone in that room may only hear one person, one voice, that they go, that's me. So that's what it's about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, that's all very, very soft and warm and fuzzy and come give me a hug. That's what people will be there for. So what of your story and your background, your experience that you can bring into that? So I want you now, have it in two columns. What do I want to say? And what do people want to hear? Just so you've got a bit of muscle memory of writing that down, of trying to match what it is you want to bring. If you've got an idea now, by now, I think you're starting to form a bit of an idea about what you may speak about. And what do you think the audience are going to do? We know they want to be inspired. So how can I bring this thing that I want to talk about and bring that together with a need for my audience to feel inspired? Have a couple of minutes to write that down. Like I said, you don't have to have all the answers by the end of today. It's okay. you need to take a 5-minute break, take a 5-minute break. It's okay. Been a lot of talking, a lot of thinking. Bit of therapy today too, I think. Yeah. So online folks, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Last bit. All right, I've got our online people are still online. Yep, still all there. So we're going to move now from the part where we were talking about ourselves, and more into the structure of the TED Talk. So as we move into the structure of the TED Talk, we really want to know, well, how do they do it? How do they make this so compelling? And the first bit, and generally what I spend most of the time developing in these kind of speeches, is the opening hook. And this goes for social media posts as well. You spend probably about 80% of your effort in a social media post with that first opening line, getting that right. Because if someone doesn't feel like they're hooked in from that very first line, they're not likely to listen that much. And by the way, this is Himanshu, who's doing filming at the moment. This is basically the capture stuff for my social media. So don't worry about it. We're not recording your performance or anything like that. This is actually me just wanting to be a hero on social media. And exactly. Did I teach anyone anything? That's what he's doing over there. So if anyone really does not want to be in the background of camera and all that, just probably try and sit yourself over this side more so, because he'll be filming from that side if there's a massive problem with that. But yeah, please do feel free to move if you need to. So the opening hook is starting with either a compelling story. So it could be, the other day I was walking down the street and you'll never believe what happened to me. So immediately you've got that, whoa, okay, I want to hear about this. What happened? That's like clickbait, right? Sorry? No. And that's the simple hook. That's yeah, exactly right. That's why that works. Because you get something happened. It's like, what? Tell me what happened. I need to find out. Yeah. Or it could be that you start off with a fact. So it could be 37% of people are avoiding the news, actively avoiding the news. 37%. Let's explore that. And you're going, oh, that's interesting. Interesting fact. I think there's something in there I want to learn about. Or it could be a provocative question. Something like, what if government people stopped using the word outcomes? And just watch every government person be triggered by that and go, what? That's literally our mission statement says to get better outcomes. So it could be that a provocative question, right? Like Hannah says, I quite often say things that are controversial, but I always back it up. Like I don't just say it to be a dick. And that's the key here. You're not trying to be misleading. You're not trying to lie. You're not trying to be a dick. You're not just, you are trying to get attention, but it's attention because there's a deeper message, a deeper thing that you want to talk about. So you start with that really compelling opening line. There's one thing you have to do in the rest of your speech is what one thing? What do you think that one thing is you need to do? Yes, absolutely. You have to deliver on the promise and answer that question. If you said 37% of people avoid the news, exactly. You're going to go, well, why are they doing it? You know, many reasons, but some very key ones. Or you're one of the 37%. I am too. There you go. There you go. So that yeah, exactly. Like Fox News, man. Anyway, so it's starting off with something that drags people in, makes them go, oh, this is going to be interesting. Now, every single TED Talk does this. They will quite often, because there are a lot of science and academic people, will start off with a statistic. Or they'll say, we have approximately 37 years worth. I like the number 37 for some reason. Approximately 37 years worth of livable atmosphere on this planet. As a holy crap. I want to hear what she has to say.
To be a man or a bear, not to be like, oh, well, because it was something different, we get so used to hearing the same thing, it's like you're hypnotized, so it's almost like we've got to stand up there and say something different.
Human beings are hardwired for storytelling. It's the way we have learned since the beginning of our existence. From rock paintings in Kakadu that have been sitting there for 40,000 to 60,000 years that were there to tell a story and record what was going on, to the cave paintings in the Neander Valley of France by the Neanderthal people. So there's so many ways that we share stories. And so because of our whole history, that what we've shared is through stories, like the written history is a very short part of the history of humankind. That only really started in the Mesopotamia about 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. Before that, we didn't write. We spoke. Stories were passed down by stories, by telling, by verbal, oral history. So yes, it can be a little bit unreliable. We don't know whether some of those stories, like did Gilgamesh actually slay the dragon? Did Nimrod actually slay Gilgamesh? Or no, or like did those things, did Noah actually build an ark that crashed onto, I want to say Mount Sinai? Am I right? You would know that stuff. No. Wrong faith, okay. Right, faith. But did Noah's Ark actually crash on Mount Sinai? Was there actually like two of every animal that fitted on the ark, and how that scientifically work out? The stories have been handed down over a long period of time. It takes a lot of faith to believe some of them, but some of them we look back and go, oh, the biblical record of Jericho looks like it actually happened. Like that there was a great cataclysm that brought down the walls of Jericho. Now, was it a bunch of Israelites blowing trumpets to bring down those walls? Maybe not. But we know that something happened because there's a story. Or well, they just going like that. We don't know. Or was there an earthquake at the same time that did that? We don't know. Absolutely. And that's that curiosity is why that works. You're creating that curiosity. So that's the opening. Then we move on to providing the background information that proves that concept or answers that question or delivers on the promise of what you've just stated. So you think about essays at school, we all hate them, right? But this is almost an essay structure, an opening statement, 3 main points to present and back up your argument, and then a concluding statement. They're horrible. Yeah. Yeah. I know a couple of guys. Could be a triggering thing for you. Because I just mentioned essays. I didn't even like writing essays, and I'm a prolific writer. But the reason why the essay is an essay is because it works on it works on the idea of an opening hook that gives a person a reason to read it, and then 3 main points. Because we walk away from a talk or a conference, we only really walk away with 2 or 3 things that we can remember.
Or is it something?
Oh, there's lots of them. Well, exactly. I'm the same. I'm that. I do the same. Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we want you to do that. Oh no. You don't have to write a thing. You can just have this all in your head. Yeah. Ultimately, I don't walk up to a stage with a speech. Never. The only part I usually would take up is maybe like one slip of paper, which is I want to acknowledge the Chief Minister, the Honourable Member for, and make sure I get the protocol right. And after that, it's like put that in my pocket and get on with your life. Okay, so you'll probably you'll find that's a superpower.
Yeah.
That's actually an advantage. It's just a structure. It's just open your hook, 3 main points, deliver a really good, impactful end that has some kind of action to it. Yeah. Yep. That's good. Yeah. Do you want to do 2 points? Sure. Do you want to do 4 points? Great. The only limitation you've got is 10 minutes. So that's our limitation of how long each one of these will be. And you can go for 3 minutes, 4 minutes if you want to, and do a mic drop and walk out. I did that oh man, I did that at a No Women Left Behind conference a few years ago, and they came up and said, "Okay, you got like 8 minutes to speak." I got up there, did it in 2, and this like thrown off stage. I know. Again, I had that white male privilege, just like, oh, what are they going to do? They're going to like not pay me. They didn't pay me for this one. Oh man. It takes a lot of, you have to warm it up a lot to be able to do that sort of stuff. And I certainly had to warm it up for that one. You just get the courage to do it. But like starting with that compelling story, that compelling statistic or fact or something provocative, which I think you've got like 100 questions that are really provocative that you'd like to ask in there. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, open up Pandora's box. Yeah. And we're back to the safe space. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's when we come to the context of how do you then explain that out? Because the worst thing you could do is make this grandiose statement of say this and then do what I did, mic drop and walk out. You know, thankfully I did a TED talk in 2 minutes. Like I did the thing, 3 points, and then did the out and then bang. And I did it for dramatic effect. Like I didn't do it because I was being I did it for a dramatic effect because I was referring to the mic drop moment. And I actually said to them, I've always wanted to do this. Is it okay, Mr. Soundman? Can I drop it? He was like, and I went, no, I do it anyway. And he was fast. I gave him the warning so I could turn it down so it didn't make that horrible noise. So, but I hope I didn't break that microphone because those things are like about $400 each. I didn't get an invoice, so I'm okay. That's been fine. But the context is delivering in 3 really rapid points to back up what you just said. If you're saying we need to change protocol because it's boring and no one wants to hear it, and it's taking away from the message and the power of the spoken word. And here's 3 reasons why, including what your possible replacement would be. So when we regulate and tell people they must simply do this, then we take away the meaning of it. No one thinks it's like the cookie thing that comes up on every website you go to. It says, accept these cookies. You go, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, they already know enough about me. They're fine. Yeah, exactly right. So you go with that's one reason. Another reason why is because we're not saying anything that we mean in there. All we're doing is just doing something we're told to do. So we're taking away, and it's taking a minute worth of time out of my 10-minute speech. And then you go, but there's another way we could do this. What if we could do this? And that would be a third. Here's my way of doing it. A way of thinking different. Remember those questions we asked? What can I teach? What have I noticed? How do I think differently about this? And what happened and how did it happen? So those 4 questions, that's where that context is coming in. And your thesis statement, which is a fancy word of saying conclusion. So it's like, I think it's ChatGPT's second favorite word after delve. ChatGPT loves the word delve. Like, just let's delve into this. Anyone who uses the word delve, it's okay. Or esteem, yes. Yeah. Delve. Yeah. Or it goes, in a world where, it throws off like some sort of statement. But the closing statement is basically you leaving some kind of message for someone to take away. Because I can guarantee you, they're probably not going to read the show. I'm going over how I'm down with the context and they're going, yeah, whatever, what's the point, and they get to the point, this is what they go. Yeah, you're gonna be that girl that said that, you're gonna be that guy that said that. So quite often what happens, and it's like not bait switch, but it's like a callback. You're calling back to him. So for those 37% of people who avoid the news, are you really, or are you just being more selective about the news that you're reading? And is that a challenge that all of us can want maybe?
Is there a chance that the opening book in the context, like you were saying, that people would be so shocked by Hannah that they don't hear the thesis statement and then it's a waste?
I think you got biases.
Yeah, because I'm already thinking about their opinion and their.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to say something that's going to trigger someone off, and like they're going to. I'll give you an example, right? I had a situation this past week in Cairns at that conference I went to, and I wrote about it on LinkedIn, and it's like my most viral thing. Like over 50,000 people have seen this whole thing. So it's crazy. It really, like, people went, "Oh my God, yes, yes, yes." And it was basically a guy who was, typical bombastic white guy, middle-aged, who had a message, had a workshop, and people were sitting up the back on some tables, and a few people were scattered up the front. He was like, "Come on, let's all move forward, let's move forward." And one of the women up the back, she's like, "Oh no, I'm okay, I'm okay." So he just walked up to her, basically, stood over her, "Please excuse me." Like this. Workshop, and sit up the front. And then all her credit. She stood up like this. I'll sit where I want to sit and I'll learn the way I want to learn. Like, holy crap. This woman, man, ovaries of steel. Like, man, this woman, like, I was so proud of her. And she stood up to him, and he then started to argue. And I turned around and said, "Mate, leave her alone. She'll sit where she wants to sit." And it took a guy to tell him, because he obviously didn't respect a woman's right to do what she wanted to do. So a guy needed to step in and bring him down from that. Now, that's not me being a hero. She was the hero.
Yeah.
I'm exactly. But what that did then, I walked out, basically said, "You're a dick," and walked out. Then she walked out as well after giving him a mouthful. Like, she was spot on. And another person walked out with her. Now, there were only 7 people in that workshop. 3 of us walked out. So it wasn't like he had a cast of thousands ready to hear his great wisdom. There was only 7 people sitting in a big room. That happening, that opening of his, meant that doesn't matter what I did or what kind of mindset work I had done in my life, I was not going to hear a word he had to say or see any value in it, because he completely broke that. Now, it's my reaction, and I completely own my reaction, that I decided I wasn't going to listen to this. And I've no regrets. Basically, as I found out later, and there's nothing he said that couldn't be Googled, like most speeches. You can Google all that shit. But it's exactly that point, that if you open up with such a controversial position or opinion, just realize some people are going to shut down straight away. So you come in with a very progressive and very inclusive message, that anyone who has a very, not even conservative, because it's not even the right word for it, a very like, let's just say Trumpist, a very Trumpist point of view, Trump-like point of view, they'll shut down straight away and they won't hear a word you had to say. Nothing you say will change their mind. Exactly. Yeah. You're not going to convince me that there should be apartheid in this country, that we should separate people based on, oh, if someone comes in and said apartheid works, and I'm like, shut down immediately. I won't hear a word they have to say because I have a particular bias towards something else, not that. The TED Talk, what it happens is that there's a program. And in that program, and you have seen this in programs for things you've spoken at, that there's a program that explains a bit of the background of that person. And so you can go, oh, look, so what's Myra Fordham about? Okay. Oh, that's interesting. She's gone through this particular thing and she talks about this. Okay, great. I want to see more of that. Great. I'll go into her session and I'll probably listen with a lot more open mind because something about that program, or they've linked in you or they've looked you up on your website, they know something about you and there's something that interests them. So they're automatically a much more open book. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Just asking questions. So I think if they know, oh, well, I can see why she's doing that.
Yep.
I can't relate, but I can see why. And then they start to question their everyday life.
So your thesis statement at the end or your closing statement can be in the form of a question. What would the world look like if only we just started telling the truth?
Yeah.
Bang. Or it could be a closing actual statement. The world would be a much better place if only we started telling the truth. Same words, but sort of spun around. One's a question. Makes you go, I'm imagining now that word.
Yeah.
Or you want to leave with a certain authority, you go, the world will be a better place. So it's just the use of language. And for those of you who speak English as a second, third, fourth, or fifth language, I do apologize. English is a very contextual language, and our tones are weird. It's very interpretive, yeah. It's an indicative language. So Chinese, for instance, is a very comprehensive language. There's a word for everything. In English, we often refer to things by silence. And things like, exactly right. And we make English makes a lot of collective assumptions. Like that, what I'm talking about. When I refer to, that episode of The Simpsons was so funny. And you're going, what episode of The Simpsons? Instead, but in Chinese, that would be the episode of The Simpsons, an American cartoon series, which featured President Bill Clinton talking with, and it's a much more comprehensive language. And most languages are like that. They're far more comprehensive. English is a bastard language, right? It's a bit of this, bit of that, bit of this, bit of that. And it brings it all together and makes lots of collective societal assumptions. Yeah. Oh, blah, blah. I just went, right? Oh. So that I do apologize that this will be in English. So it will have a lot of that collective assumptions, but I think everybody here has worked so hard on English, if it's not your first language, and you've got a fairly good understanding. Now, nobody will judge you on your English ability. I saw a great cutout, like a meme the other day, which was somebody in a forum talking to someone else. I think it was on Reddit, and somebody said something. Someone who had English as an additional language said something that wasn't grammatically correct, and then a person underneath him corrected them and said, "Yeah, perhaps you need a bit more time in your English." The answer was, "Awesome. You speak English because you can't speak any other language. I speak English because I know you can't speak any other language. We are not the same." Right? Exactly right. Mic drop in the comments. So I understand that for some of you, this will be harder than for others. How you structure will level out what your English ability is. So if English is not great for you, the way you structure this will help your argument be understood. Even when you think your English isn't helping, your structure will.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So that's why we go make it this structure, because everybody's on a level playing field then. Absolutely. Absolutely. With those, with those main points, and this is where we'll close up. With your first point, you always want to put some supporting evidence behind that opening statement you made. 37% of people are avoiding the news. Why is that? And let me explain that 37% was gathered by one particular survey done in the US. So we don't know what that's going to be like in Australia, but we can assume there's a lot of people who even today, who in here avoids the news. Oh yeah, okay. Roughly about 40% of our audience here actively avoids the news. So we know that this is a truth, but we want to know why. So what I've done there, I've found the statistic, explained the statistic, then proved it amongst my audience. And even if I go about 40%, yeah, and there's, there might have been 80%, I go, well, clearly no one in here knows what was on the news last night. And you can actually refer as a joke back to that. But these main points you're bringing in are because one of them is to prove what you just said. The other one is to then go into building on that first point. So now you've said, I've made a statement, I've backed it up. Here's kind of where I'm going with this. I'm going towards this, and you might provide a few more basic facts. Now, even a study done by Nielsen said that people who are under the age of 27, for them, it's about 70% of people are avoiding the news. So what we know is that as people get older, they're not just magically turning on Channel 10 News in the afternoon, which comes out of Melbourne, or the Channel 7 News, which comes out of Hobart in Darwin. They're not just magically going and buying the NT News. They never buy the news. So there's a crisis coming where are they getting their news? Another study indicated the one place where they get their news from is TikTok. TikTok, that thing. That's getting, so you can see how I went from, I supported my opening statement. I then deepened the references I was giving. And then I surprised someone with yet another deeper fact. So I'm adding more and more credibility to the statement I'm making. So
I'm like, well, what is the well-being of the 37%? Like, can we compare that? Like,
yeah. Where are the places when and then you can go deeper into that. But the idea is that you don't need to necessarily answer the question in full. But what we'll come to in point 3 is presenting that third point, making sure it ties in with the previous points. So in the previous points I mentioned, 37%. Younger people, it's about 70%. And TikTok seems to be where young people are getting most of their news from. So in my third point, I go, so doesn't that make us think that if 70% of young people are avoiding news, but they're on TikTok getting news, how can we maybe make it so that the news was better able to fit into a 15-second TikTok?
Yeah.
And why are news organizations not doing this? Yeah, the BBC does it. The ABC does it. Yeah. 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 So there's going to be some ethical issues in there, yeah, and some political issues. Yeah. And so I guess the point is in there that it's not about the news and all that. It's looking at that structure I took. I had my opening statement, I backed it up with a couple more facts that I've managed to find. And then I go, well, there's this TikTok thing. But what if that's the key? What if can we reach young people through the places where they already are? Instead of us trying to force them to watch cable television news or to watch the 6 p.m. nightly news at a specific time, why don't we bring the news to where they are on the platforms where they are?
but the problem
And they like to be out. Yeah. And so, there's more depth I could go into there, which shows that actually the TikTok is a victim of its own success, where there's 1.5 billion people consuming it, but only around about 3 million people actually making content, so that you're very likely to reach people whether they're looking for you or not. So that's and again, that would be another piece of information I know about that network that I bring into that third point. So I go, what would it be like if news wasn't just giving facts,
Mhm.
it was actually entertaining and fun
Mhm.
while it was connecting those facts together. Oh, God. No, I actually delete. It's a recycle. I did this at a conference. I did this at a conference recently. Yeah, over in Port Douglas a couple of months ago. Yeah, yeah, I'm the same. Yeah. Exactly. And there's a lot of ethics in there you need to, yeah. But please don't dwell on the news thing. That was just my example. Yep. Because I was asked to speak on the topic of
So-
news avoidance. But I'm also like considered to be an expert in social media and marketing. So yeah, so it's like, yes, we know he can speak. Yeah. So in there, because that was a community media conference. And so they were looking at the subject of news avoidance, and nobody really knew how to speak to that they were speaking to. So someone recommended me because I work with Meta and I work with LinkedIn, or not work with LinkedIn, but I do a lot of LinkedIn news stuff, and I've been featured on LinkedIn news quite a bit. So like, oh, okay, that's a perfect fit. You'd probably know these things. I went, some of it, yeah, I'll have to do some research, but I could speak with some authority. Oh, we're now welcome to the stage. Media and marketing for the last 17 years and as part of Meta's community training group. And immediately they've presented a reason why I'm speaking on that. Yeah, that's it. But what we're going to do, I'm not introducing you on the night as that person with that background and that expertise. You'll just be introduced as who you are,
So they won't be.
your name. You'll just be, please welcome to the stage, Myra Fordham. I'm not giving them any framing of what you're talking about. That's for you to do. That's your message. So you're just like, here's Myra, here's Taryn, here's Harry.
What's next?
Well, that's it for today. Yeah. So what we'll do in the next one is I want you to come back to the next one next month with the topic you think you'd like to talk about. And we're going to workshop that. We're going to develop that together, those points. So if you want to do some extra bonus homework, figure out your main points, figure out your opening statement, but we will be doing that together next time as well. So if you do it ahead of time, we'll help you refine it. Yep. You can dial in if you want to, and it will be recorded. Yeah. The next one, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like, yeah, it's in the email, yeah, or on the website. Yeah, yeah, I'll have a Zoom call for it. Yeah, it's only the first two. It's only the first two that I'll have to dial in for, because once we get to the third one, we're actually practicing. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll actually be practicing that one. Yeah. And then the fourth one is where you'll actually be delivering it to us. We'll actually, yeah, we'll actually get to deliver it to each other. So depending on how many of you are, I might have split it into 2 sessions if there's still lots of you at that point. Now, before we go, has anyone got any questions about the process, the competition, all that sort of thing? The competition is really just like it's a sweetener, really. It's really just, here's a way to learn some stuff for free. Yeah. Funny enough, like the accountant wants the $2,000. That's it, right? Yeah, no, that we all. Trust me, I'm the one giving it away, so feel it more than anyone. Yeah. What? Be pro in the room. Sorry, Mari, you had a question.
For you.
Yeah, so they will be given a certain criteria, and I'll go through that with you. The third session,
Okay.
what the criteria is. Because at the moment, I don't want you to think of the outcome, I want you to think of the process for now. Work on the journey. Absolutely. Yeah, we want the journey. Because honestly, if you're just aiming for what is going to get me to win, you'll miss something. Because what you'll do, you'll shape yourself to appeal to the judges. And you're not just appealing to the judge. The $2,000 thing is just such a small part of it. The bigger part is the other people in the room who will see you for their particular organization. So that the Chamber of Commerce, for instance, will see you and go, we so need to get her in to speak at this next thing. Or tourism top end, go, oh my gosh, we need to get him in.